It's been a little while since I covered a smartphone, however the Honor 70 piqued my interest, not only due to its snazzy exterior design and intriguing camera setup, but also I was curious to see how it compared to rival offerings. Now the phone itself can be found for £480 in the UK, €600 and $650. In this review I'm comparing it to its rivals and also giving you my own subjective opinion after having used the phone for roughly 2 weeks. So jumping straight in, let's talk about its exterior design, and here it's available in a emerald green, a midnight black and also a crystal silver. The latter certainly does look stylish and stands out in comparison to its competitors, but unfortunately incurs quite a lot of fingerprint marks. As a result, you might want to opt for the emerald green, which I have on review. Now as for the rear profile, you do have a dual camera setup. In other words, there's 3 cameras housed inside 2 separate modules, and while this does look very stylish and is certainly a little bit different from what its competitors offer, it does have a bit of a camera bump, meaning it will rock if you have it placed on a flat surface. Of course, to negate this, you could have a camera case, but that will add to the overall bulkiness and the overall weight, whereby out the box it sits at 178 grams. Now towards the front of the phone you have a curved OLED display, which we'll touch upon very shortly, and a hole punch camera which sits at the center and at the top of the phone. Towards the side you've got a volume rocker and a power button, and then towards the bottom bezel you'll notice that you have got a USB Type-C port and also a singular downward firing speaker. Yes, unfortunately it's only got a mono setup and doesn't have a stereo setup, which is quite a shame given its price point and given what its competitors offer. Now you might have noticed that I have not mentioned any 3.5mm jack, and yes indeed it does not have it, and equally one thing which might not be as obvious is that this phone does not have any wireless charging capabilities, nor does it have any ingress protection. Now the ingress protection, in other words IP rating, that means that it's not waterproof or water resistant, at least not certified by Honor. And yet again, if you look at some of its competitors, they offer it, and that is something that you might want to consider if you're prone to dropping your phone in a pond or let's say down the toilet. Now while that is a little bit disappointing, its display will be quite impressive to a lot of consumers. It's got a 6.6-inch form factor, 120Hz refresh rate and OLED technology. In terms of its resolution, it sits at 1080 x 2400, giving it a 395 ppi. Therefore it looks pretty sharp no matter what you are looking at. Of course it won't compete with some other phones out there which have a higher resolution, but I think for a lot of consumers this will suffice. It's also got HDR10+ for those people who are consuming HDR content. Now in terms of the brightness levels, I had it registered at 447 nits in terms of peak brightness. If I were to enable auto brightness and shine, let's say, my smartphone light on it, it goes up to 630 nits, so giving you better increased visibility under direct sunlight. And as for minimum brightness, it gets all the way down to 4.35 nits, making it quite dim and therefore very much usable in a very dark room. Other than that, it is worth pointing out that the display itself has got fantastic contrast ratio and excellent color accuracy. Here it really stood out in comparison to some other phones that I've noticed, and I had no complaints whatsoever, be it from editing pictures on it to actually taking pictures and looking back at the photo gallery and checking at the scenery that I just shot. Now this does perfectly lead me on to its camera performance, and here Honor uses the Sony IMX800 sensor, which is a world first in any smartphone. As a result of this, you have got a rear 54 megapixel f1.9, a wide angle 50 megapixel f2.2, and also a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now the combination of all of this is pretty impressive to say the least. From my own test, be it in bright sunlight or a little bit of low light conditions, I was left seriously jaw-dropped. Yes, it doesn't do too well when you start zooming in, given the fact it doesn't have any optical zoom, and you can go in terms of a 10 times digital zoom, but you will notice quite a lot of noise and graininess. But on the whole, if you're just leaving it at 1 or 2 times zoom, I think you'll find yourself pretty impressed, specifically if you're sharing on social media. Now the only downside is when it comes to its rear lenses, that if you're looking at low light or nighttime photography solely, here the Google Pixel 6a would be my top pick. There's of course one from Samsung as well with the Galaxy A53, but here the Honor would stand out on top in comparison to the Samsung, but just doesn't quite compete with the overall algorithm or processing use of the 6a, at least not in my opinion, not from the tests that I have done or indeed seen online as well. Effectively, what I'm trying to say over here is that low-light photography is impressive, but not exactly class-leading. Now, moving past the rear set of cameras, you have got a singular 32 megapixel f2.4 lens at the front of the phone. And here I must say I was left pretty impressed. In comparison to offerings from Samsung or even Google, I think it's far superior due to the overall image that it actually attains, and even actually in low-light photography. What doesn't leave me as impressed, specifically in comparison to, let's say, the Pixel 6a, is the overall portrait mode. It seems that Honor still haven't perfected the overall algorithm over here, and as a result means that you might notice some sort of anomalies, like in my case in low light photography, it seemed to picture these yellow lines around this little sign, but that certainly wasn't present as you might have seen before, and means that if you're going to take portrait shots, you might want to look into some of the rival offerings, or maybe just not use it altogether and just use the regular photo mode on the Honor 70. Now, while still photography is pretty good on the whole, what didn't leave me as impressed is its video capabilities. At the rear, you've got a limitation of 4K 30 or 1080p 60. While I appreciate some of its competitors don't really offer extra options, it still would have been nice to see Honor actually pushing out the boat. Now, furthermore, I was not impressed with the amount of jitter. When panning from left and right, and therefore literally not moving all that much, I noticed a little bit of jitter, and that is due to the fact that the phone only operates on EIS, in other words electronic image stabilization, and doesn't use any form of optical image stabilization. Here its competitors do, and therefore give you a little bit of a better video capabilities. Now, with that in mind, here's a short little demo of me being very still and filming a train in Berlin. Now, hopefully there you're able to agree with me that when you're standing still and taking a video of something, it looks absolutely spectacular. But as soon as you start moving around, the overall camera performance of the Honor 70 seriously degrades. Now, this is quite a shame because Honor have actually tried to push out a lot of video features, such as multi-video, which allows you to take a video of yourself and also of your surroundings at the same time. Here's a little demo of how it looks like. Testing the multi-view function, so it's the rear camera and it's got myself as well, so hopefully you can see that. And let's just go and zoom in with the rear camera 2 times, and then now we're going to go into 5 times zoom while keeping my front camera active and going back to 1 times. Ultra wide is not available, and now I'm just going to tap on one of the settings and then go on picture in picture. And so right now I've got myself talking while I have got a picture within the full display, which is quite nice to see. And if I were to tap again, I can go back to the front and rear, and I'm back into the normal split view. Now, aside from the really cool use of multi-video, you do also have solo cut. There's a new feature that Honor have integrated, and I think here it's got a bit of a niche, whereby you'll be recording in a vertical format and you would track a singular object. The singular object, let's say a person, will therefore then create a vertical video format of said subject. Now, this can be quite handy if you're going to be sharing videos on different social media platforms, or for example, if you want to highlight a certain individual in comparison to the rest of the frame, but I think its use case might be somewhat limited. But do let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Aside from this, you have got a plethora of different options such as slow-mo or, for example, panorama or time-lapse, which should come as no surprise because such features have been around on smartphones for quite a long time. Now, using all these features will certainly consume a lot of energy, but thankfully Honor have included a 4800 milliamp battery, which is insanely efficient. In my own controlled benchmarks, I noted 26 hours and 30 minutes, and that is from a video playback file, which pretty much runs on a loop. And this is absolutely incredible. It's far better than a lot of its competitors, namely, for example, the likes of the Google Pixel 6a or even the regular 6, which is far more expensive, and better than a lot of older flagship phones out there. Honor have really optimized the battery in such a way that you should be able to get a full day of usage even if you're a medium or heavy user. Now let's say for example you're running out of juice. Here, if you do have access to a charger that does support it, you have up to 66 watts of total power input, giving you 0 to 60% in roughly 20 minutes. You do also have the ability to have reverse charging, whereby the Honor 70 will support up to 5 watts of power delivery. Now moving on, it's worth pointing out that this phone is available in a few different configurations. The one on review has 128 gigabytes of space and 8 gigabytes of RAM, which should certainly suffice for a lot of individuals, although it's worth noting that there's no micro SD card expansion slot, and rather only opts for a dual SIM setup only, nano SIM to be more specific. As for its chipset, it's running a Snapdragon 778G Plus, which is a 5G chip and a 6nm architecture and an octa-core CPU. As for its GPU, it sits with an Adreno 642L. Now the benchmarks, as you'll be able to note, are pretty decent on the whole, at least in my opinion, but the real-world experience is far superior. It's very fluid thanks to its 120Hz OLED screen, and means that when you're gaming, such as playing a game such as Asphalt 9, it is very impressive. I noted no sort of lag while using the phone, be it in terms of switching apps or of course running more intense games, and I had no problems whatsoever in such experiences. Of course, you might want more, and if you're a hardcore gamer, you might want to look for a more powerful chipset, but for a lot of consumers out there, be it if you're a moderate or light gamer or just a regular user like myself using it for camera or switching apps or multiple different things, then I think here it will certainly suffice. Now this does perfectly lead me onto its user experience, and here I've got no inherent issue with Honor's pretty heavy skin of Magic UI 6.1 on top of Android 12. Of course, purists out there will much prefer the likes of the Google Pixel 6a or the Nothing Phone 1, which pretty much runs almost a stock version of Android. But for those people like myself who like a little bit more of personalization or customization, then here you'll find that the amount of features that Honor has included with its Magic UI system will certainly be appreciated. The only takeaway, however, is that the Honor 70 does come with a little bit of bloatware, which is something that I remember back in yesteryear when Samsung used to do it all the time. But this can be very easily rectified by just uninstalling the apps which come pre-installed, and that can be done without any sort of issues. Now, a few other things that you might want to know about the Honor 70 are the fact that it has got a in-display optical fingerprint sensor, which is pretty fast, although I much prefer a physical fingerprint sensor, which I do appreciate is a little bit out of fashion nowadays, but this would be certainly better, and given what Honor's pedigree is with the physical sensors, it would have been great to see this. But anyway, when it comes to biometric security, you do also have facial recognition, and of course you can use more traditional means such as a PIN or password. Now when it comes to connectivity, you have got up to support of Wi-Fi 6, which is great, and of course it's downward compatible, and it's also got dual band, in other words 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz. As for Bluetooth codecs, it's great to see SBC, AAC, aptX, aptX-HD and LDAC all supported. It is slightly a shame not to see aptX adaptive, although I do appreciate this is somewhat limited by what Qualcomm provide via the Snapdragon chipset. Aside from this, it does also have got support for NFC, in other words you can make contactless payments with the Honor 70. So with all that information that you've hopefully soaked up, what do I make about the Honor 70? Well, like any product out there in the world, there's some pros and cons. On one hand, I like its fluid experience thanks to its 120Hz OLED screen, and also the fact that its chipset inclusion gives it a fantastic performance. And then you have got great still photography, a fantastic exterior design, and also better still, excellent battery life. On the flip side, you do not have any ingress protection, no wireless charging capabilities, and its video capabilities aren't that great, and in comparison to certain phones out there in the market, low light photography isn't the best either. So there is definitely some things to consider over here, so I'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts of the phone down in the comment section below. And of course, if you want to see more content from the channel and myself and more phone reviews, do let me know, and of course, do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated and allows me to continue delivering honest reviews like this one. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.